Hi, it's Richard here from Intelligent Advisor IT Consulting with another in our series about the example decision services provided by Oracle in the online documentation for Oracle Intelligent Advisor. This time we're looking at the British Citizenship Example Decision Service. So if you haven't done this before, here's how to get hold of one of the example decision services. I've gone to the online help of Oracle Intelligent Advisor, which of course you can reach through Oracle Policy Modeling, or you probably have the link saved somewhere, and just use the search feature to look for example decision services. It's this option here, example decision service projects. This brings you to a list. And last time out, we looked at account risk assessment. This time out, we're going to look at the British citizenship. So the JSON file is over here. So I'm going to right click and choose Save Link As. I'll save it to the desktop. And you can see that it's opened up in Notepad++ in my case. And as you'll recall, decision services, which are used in the web authoring of rules, are now, strictly speaking, just JSON files. So there's no zip files like you would have in Oracle Policy Modeling, just a JSON file. Let's read about this. It says, used to determine if a person is eligible for British citizenship, could be invoked from different policy models that each need to know if a person is a British citizen. We'll talk about that in a little while. Let's go to our Oracle Intelligent Advisor Hub, go to our projects page, go to the Actions menu, and let's choose the Import button. And we're going to import the JSON file that we just downloaded. To keep things nice and simple, I'm going to put a prefix on it of RN, that's me, and I'm going to put it in a workspace that I have specially created to put my decision services in. Before we click import, let's take a brief moment to see what this decision service is made up of as far as its contract is concerned. In the input section, we can see that we have a country of birth. In an output section, we have a Boolean called eligible citizenship. So this is a very simple decision service designed to tell me yes or no whether someone is potentially a British citizen. So let's go ahead and click import and get a better look at this decision service. You'll notice that the decision service demonstrates very well the use of the headings and other styles, because when you use a heading 1 or heading 2, they appear in the navigation pane over here, which makes moving up and down a long document really rather easy. You can show and hide the navigation pane by clicking this button over here. On the left-hand side, we have the input and output that we saw a moment ago, and you can also review a flat data model to see that there's a birth country, there's the Boolean, whether you're eligible, and then there are a couple of Booleans to understand whether they have a particular statute, if they're a British overseas territory or a protected person. So we've got a good idea of the data model, and we know the contract. Let's dig into the rules themselves. Remember that rules in a decision service are created as part of what is called a block, or at least I call it a block. So for the purposes of readability, this has been broken into 3 different blocks. You'll notice that the 3 different blocks all say calculated once per case, which means that they have all essentially a global scope if you're thinking about Oracle Policy Modeling. They don't have any entities, so everything is executed once. You can break it into as many different pieces as you like. It makes it a lot easier to read. So let's take a look at the first block. It says if the person is a British protected person or British overseas territory, then they are eligible for British citizenship. And these are the subsections, if you will, to define whether they are a British protected person or a British overseas territory citizen. So you can see, and I'm just going to just edit this because it's a spelling mistake. Oracle, take note. Gibraltar is spelled like this. And if this is your birth country, then you're a British overseas territory citizen. And if you're a British protected person, and so on. So I'm just going to go ahead and commit those changes. Spelling mistake on Gibraltar. And you'll recall that a decision service, if you want to debug it essentially, you don't need to deploy it. You can go into live mode. And when live mode switches on, we can refer to the contract, so the inputs and the outputs, to understand what we are getting. And we can look at the details of the decision service rules to understand their function. So let's put in a birth country of Gibraltar, since I was going all about Gibraltar. You can see that in live mode, it's indicated it has selected Gibraltar, and therefore I am true a British Overseas Territory citizen, which means I am eligible for British citizenship. If I put, let's put France, you'll see that I am not a protected person, and I am not an Overseas Territories person, and therefore I am not eligible for British citizenship. Unlike Oracle Policy Modeling, you'll notice that it returns null as opposed to returning false or returning unknown or uncertain. But in any case, this is not managed in my decision service today. So let's put in India, and you can see that I am a British protected person and therefore I'm eligible for British citizenship. So the live mode lets me see how this thing works. And if I am challenged by it, I can click on anything and I can say, okay, I'll click on, let's go down to this. Oops, I'll get down there. This row is activated. The table is not relevant because I am not in any British Overseas Territory citizen. So these little pop-up windows give you more than just a simple indicator. You can get tooltips off them, which is quite cool. And you can see the British protected person equals true is set by a rule, and it highlights the rule so I can find it. So live mode is pretty cool. I can switch back to edit mode now. Recall that with live mode and edit mode, you have another option, which is to run it via REST, which is basically, if you're familiar with any kind of online testing tool, you can now test your REST service directly in the browser, or you can go ahead and test it using your favorite tool like Postman. You will, of course, need to authenticate and get authorization token. But in any case, you can test it properly, if you will, even while it's being developed. And you can, if necessary, choose a version thereof that you want to test. So I'm going to go now and I'm going to go ahead and I've already committed it, so I don't need to save it anymore. Why don't we go into Oracle Policy Modeling to understand the remark that was made at the beginning when we were downloading the file about how to test British citizenship from an Oracle Policy Modeling project. So we could, for example, in our project, create an entity called the person, and we could create the person's country of birth, and we'll say that it's text, obviously, and we'll say we'll create a Boolean is eligible for citizenship of Britain. Okay, so we've basically got an ID, so let's call this the person's technical ID. 1, 2, 3, XYZ, whatever it is. And then so now we're going to go over to the Rules tab and click New Reference. I'm going to type in my username and password. And we're going to create a reference to the decision service we were looking at just a moment ago. Because the decision service isn't deployed yet, I'll need to look in the Projects section. So you can see down here I have RN British Citizenship, which is currently developed rather than deployed. So I will be able to select calculated once per person, and then I'll be able to map to my attribute called the person's country of birth and map to the person is eligible for citizenship of Britain. So I've taken the contract of British citizenship, applied it to my entity, and then mapped it to the relevant input and output elements of my contract. With the result now that I have, in theory, if I debug, the ability to test drive both my Oracle Policy Modeling project and my decision service reference. So let's go ahead and create a new person. And we'll say that this person is person number 1, 2, 3, 4. And the person's country of birth is India, and we can see that I am eligible for citizenship of Britain. So this is a very simple example, and it's one that an idea that we'll build on in later examples of how a decision service can become essentially a micro component of a Oracle policy modeling project. The huge advantage, of course, of this is that you maybe have multiple Oracle policy modeling projects and multiple policy modeling entities even that require the same service. So maybe you have another entity called the adult or the child. So you need to essentially call the same service multiple times. Well, you can create multiple references and call the same service with different input attributes and get the correct output. So you can map two different entities, which is a really clever idea. Let's push that just to its conclusion then. We'll create a new entity called the pet. Let's assume that pets also have the ability to apply for British citizenship, which I don't actually think they do. But, bear with me here. And we'll say the pet's country of birth. And we'll do the pet's is eligible for British citizenship. And you can probably guess what I'm going to do. I'm going to go over to rules. And before I go and do the second one, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rename this and say citizenship for person entity, just to make it clearer, and create a new one using exactly the same service as I did before. And we'll say it's once per pet. And using type ahead, it's very quickly. I can populate all of these. There we go, for each of the pet. And I'll probably rename this one. I'm added citizenship for pet entity. And I can debug once more. And I'll go in and create an instance of the pet. And we'll say that they were born in Qatar, since I saw that in the list. And we can see they're eligible for British citizenship. So I have two separate entities calling the same decision service, providing their own input attributes, which are mapped into the contract of the decision service. Without, I wouldn't, otherwise, if you're using Oracle policy modeling, you'd end up maybe writing rules on the entity level, and you'd end up writing rules twice. But here you have one microservice, or decision service, if you will, that we can call multiple times on different entities, which is pretty cool. So that just about wraps it up for this week's example of a decision service. I hope you enjoyed the video. See you soon for the next one.